everybody, and welcome to the Rabbit Trail Podcast. This is the podcast where we chase the truth wherever it runs, and this is episode number 180.
180.
That's right. We are 180, and that's pretty cool. So I'm excited about this. And for those of you who are new, this is the podcast where we pick up what we've been preaching on Sunday, some of the ideas there. We follow through on them. And I'm Greg Harrison, the senior pastor at the church that sponsors the podcast, called Olive Branch Community Church.
Hi, and I'm Theressa Harris. I'm Greg's assistant and his wife, and I'm here to ask clarifying questions and keep him from confusing you too much.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you have questions, we would love to hear from you. Just send them in to rabbittrail@obcc.church. And also, if you're in the service, there's a QR code that Yvette put at the edge of your notes, so you can use that on Sunday.
Yes. And for those of you on Spotify, she handed up the church bulletin. So, yeah, so it's nice. I'm Brent Branchot. And first off, Greg, I would love to know where do I find an assistant wife? Is that?
You should go ask Nancy.
But my name is Brent Branchot. I'm the Connections pastor here. And I would just ask you if you listen to whichever platform, if you watch it on YouTube, Spotify or Apple, just subscribe to that, hit the bell so that it alerts you when new episodes come out. Yes, and just stay connected to what's going on. And we appreciate you guys very much. So is that all? Oh, what have you guys been up to this week?
Well, we were all up to the same thing this week, weren't we?
We were.
So on Saturday, we had this awesome opportunity to connect with about 23 different new partners at the church, just making clarification for anybody who's not part of that. And it was cool. It was a good group of people. How did you guys feel about it?
I thought it was great. I love it. Whenever people go through the partnership classes, we invite them over to our house, and it's just a chance for us to get to know them and not wait 2 years to get connected.
Yeah. And sometimes we, some people haven't gotten invited because, we haven't done one, or
if you haven't been invited and you want to, reach out to Brent Branchot and he'll put you on the list.
I will.
Yeah.
We would love to have you there, and it's really just an informal hangout. So it's just
with
great
name tags. So
yes.
I love it because I can't remember names.
We didn't have all the name tags.
I know.
Yes.
I bought new ones. So
Good for you.
we won't run out next time.
There you go.
But it really does help me. I love seeing people's names and being like, okay, I got you. And so it's so much more comfortable for me. Yeah. And so if you can all wear name tags out there, and I'm just it was a good time. It was good food too.
It was very nice, and thank you, Theressa, for always making it so hospitable. We appreciate that.
Fun.
All right, so getting into the sermon.
Yeah.
Again, this is episode 150. We are in the sermon series. Did I say 150?
Yeah.
Where the heck did that come from?
30 episodes ago. That's where they came from.
Wow. This is.
I thought there was a joke coming.
No joke. It's just my mind is going. Is all.
There's the joke.
There was no joke coming. My mind is just going. So again, the name of the series we're in right now is Countdown: 5 Days That Changed the World. Ooh, that sounds so epic.
I like it.
I do too. And the title of this sermon was called "The Battle in the Garden." It was from Mark 14, 26 through 52. So you guys can follow along. But you started out talking about humble faith, and you did the whole. What's it? Chunk from Goonies, your favorite movie of all time.
One of them.
If I had $1 for every time you quoted that movie, I would be rich. And if I had $1 for every time you quoted from Princess Bride,
yeah,
I could support many families.
And then Nacho Libre, you'd be like,
Nacho Libre,
all those three. So.
But you were talking about Chunk, and you showed the little video thing. And for those people that are copyright police, we really didn't show it. And I jest.
Do you?
Yeah. But it was like that scene where he's like, I got this, and then he drops the water bottle, and I don't got it. And you were just talking about we need a humble faith, and so part of my question was just kind of talking about, where in your life have you seen that aspect of the non-humility aspect of, I got this. Don't worry, God, I got this, I got this, I got this.
Gosh.
And it doesn't have to be a, no, I don't,
No,
it doesn't have to be a big failure at the end of that. But, where in your life do you feel like you kind of treat God that way, where you just, I got this,
I think if I'm not careful, that's my standard default. Honestly, it's like, if I'm not keeping conscious that like I need the Lord for everything in my life, that He's the one who is giving me energy and giving me the ability to act, then oftentimes, the automatic default is thinking, well, I got this. Especially that was my problem growing up, is just I had aunts and they just showered on me that you can do anything. I grew up in the you can do anything home kind of concept. And so, jumping into sports, and it's like, I got this, I could do this. And like, there's a lot of times, I think probably it's one of the reasons I struggle the most with not having grown a really, really strong developed prayer life, is because I have a tendency to think, well, I got this. And it's every time I really don't have it, God's like, you got to get back in prayer, buddy. You need me. And so, I have to keep consistent in prayer to keep I think for me, a humbleness about my faith. And yet then you brought up the fact that humble faith feels like a bit of like a contradiction, redundancy. Department of redundancy.
Because I think that faith is innately humble. There's a humility there, like we're acknowledging that we're sinners and that we need Christ to cover over that, and that.
So meaning
humility
like,
in that.
Because you have to trust somebody else automatically. It's humbling.
It's two parts. First, you have to admit that you are broken, that you are sinful, that you need it, and then you have to actually take it on and accept it, and like trust Him. I feel like that takes humility. But I don't think that it's wrong to put humble faith. It's like a reminder that our faith is humble. It's not a proud faith that is about us. Yeah.
Now, just being here and kind of knowing you two too, and you were saying, you struggle with that aspect of I got this, and you feel like it has been detrimental to your prayer life and your dependency on prayer, and you're feeling like, no, I think it just comes with the package of the gospel to just have that humility, and you have a very vibrant prayer life, right? And your family has a very so whenever you were talking, it was just like, oh yeah, I can see where that's true, because I myself struggle with a vibrant prayer life, and I know that for me, with that I got this attitude in my spiritual life is really comes down to prayer, in the sense that I always feel people are like, okay, let's share prayer requests. What can we pray for you about? And it's like, no, I'm good.
I got this.
Yeah. And I feel as though prayer requests or whatever, or just, hey, I need you guys to be praying for me, lift me up in prayer, or even me praying, to God about things. It's got to be a big deal. Something really catastrophic going on in my life, to like go, hey, yeah, pray for my family on this. Yeah. Otherwise, I feel like it's more of a bother, or it's like,
you don't want to be a bother.
Yeah. Or, I don't want to be the center of attention, and it's just like, oh, I got this, it's just a little thing. I don't need to go to God for this, I can.
What about, because I struggle with prayer requests because the things that I actually want people to pray for me, I'm not going to tell them. And you mentioned, further down in your sermon, talking about that humility and how Christ was just being super raw and honest.
Super intimate. Yeah.
And intimate, right? And so that's actually one of the things that I struggled, not with prayer on my own, but like with other people, is that what I actually want to spend time praying with, I'm not willing to share with most people.
But you have a circle that you do, or
probably like my mom and Greg and like a couple friends, yeah. But like most people, when we share prayer requests, I'm like, okay, think of something that they'll like appreciate me sharing, but won't be too intimate. Like that's like literally
what's going. Our small group's not watching this.
We've been friends for 20 years or more, right? So it's just the three of us. Go ahead and share some of those deep-seated secrets.
Usually mine is more of like something internal in me, right? It's not like, oh, help me get through the podcast.
Yeah.
That's like not what I'm talking about.
No, so I do have a struggle point in the way that I framed it too, though, and so I want to acknowledge this, like, because it can start to sound like, oh well, don't do anything if you're not constantly like praying, in that sense. It's like I do acknowledge, like, no, the Spirit of God has given me a spirit of power, a spirit of self-control, a spirit of energy. Like He's given me in his power to obey and to step out. So I'm not here trying to say like you can't act and go like I can't do anything until I've prayed. No, there's giftedness. There's the presence of the Spirit. I think when I talk about a humble spirit, it's this idea that when the Scripture tells you something, you better believe it. Like, I mean, like, here is the Word of God, Jesus himself telling these guys, you're all going to fall away. And they're like, no, And it's like, I almost feel like you're talking to like a little kid, right? I feel that way with God. And it's like, that's when I don't have a humble spirit. When I don't have a humble faith. This is when I'm literally not having faith in what God tells me. I'm not actually listening to him that, like, Greg, you're prone to failure. No, I got this time. And then I stumble into sin. I stumble into pride. And it's not stumbling. It's literally ignoring the truth that God has told me. Now, I'm trying to say that because I don't want to put people into there's a tendency in Christianity to kind of, I think, like, sit back and go, well, God's got to do it then, and
they go passive. Yeah.
Like locus of control problems. If you know what that means, like it's I can't do anything because it's not my control versus no, God's given me choices. I just don't get to choose the results of those choices. That doesn't mean I'm not given a choice. Not choosing is a choice, right? So I'm not talking about that category. Like, I don't want to get into, like, when I'm talking about a humble faith and I don't got this means, like, you can never, ever make a decision. So, but I do think for me that there's a tendency to try to step out before I've trusted, before I've engaged. Does that make sense?
What does that actually look like when you're walking in humility with God, knowing your place before him, knowing your need for him, but then also very aware of the giftings that he's given you and your abilities and, like, walking it? Like, what does that practically look like?
I think it looks like an assured confidence that the Lord has made you who he is. That we used to, I remember the early youth group, they didn't call it, confidence. They tell you is with faith. That's what confide, with faith. And so you have confidence, and it wasn't confidence in yourself, it's confidence in God.
It's God confidence.
Yeah, God confidence. That was the idea for years and years. That went away. But I like that idea because that's really what it kind of looks like. I am stepping out, confident that the Lord's promises, we'll get into this when we hit Joshua this summer, but confident that we walk forward knowing that his promises are true, but also not expecting it to go the way I want it to go. And so, yeah, I know I'm made a certain way. I'm gifted a certain way. That is good, and I give it over to the Lord with confidence that he can use it. And so I don't go up preaching. I literally, every time I preach, I actually do try to pray as often as I remember, like, make me less that you'd be more, Lord. Just make me less. I want to be about you, not about me, because I know I'm prone to, I got this. And so I think it shows up like that, simple times where you're like, even stepping out in your gift, like, God, I want this to be about you. I don't want this to be about me. God, stepping into my parenting. God, I want this to be about them. Doing this. We want this to be about you guys, like, not, and trying to trust the Lord. I think a little bit in that category. Does that help? I don't know.
Yeah.
You're here to make me not confusing. So no, just kidding.
I don't know if that's possible.
And I get that part too, because, like, on the occasions where I get the opportunity to preach, and you're just in that prayerful mode of, like, God, I don't want this to be about me. I want it to be about the message that you want, but make sure this joke really lands. Then I'll feel better.
Talk about where I don't get it.
Yeah. And so again, that whole that humility aspect in our lives, right? And I feel like for me too is, like, part of it is always trying to prove a little bit, to God, and maybe to myself more, but and I don't know how.
Like in your sermons?
No.
Oh, just in life.
Just in life.
That's
you
what
know?
Peter was doing, right? He's like, no, I really, Jesus, see, I got this. Like, no, you got me wrong. I'm with you.
Okay, so does it go back to like, I always used to call, I don't know if this is a good way to say it, but I used to say it's like the dirty little secret that none of us want a savior. Like, we want to be able to be good on our own, right? Like, the human heart really doesn't want to admit that they're broken and needs God. And so we accept him, we recognize that we're sinners, we accept him, and then all of a sudden, like, I feel like there's like a split second, and then all of a sudden we're back to wanting to like show God that we're good.
Right.
And like prove it, and like, oh, see, it's good that I'm with you, God, because
And
I'm
I feel
doing
like
good.
that's when we fall on our face.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
Because I remember, and when you were telling your story, it just gave me this flashback, and I don't even know where it came from because it's not something that I've dwelt on. But that idea that I can do it, I got this, oh, no, I don't, right? And I just remember, like, when my parents would tell me, and I was in trouble a lot.
I don't believe it.
No, I was. But, you know, and part of that was when my parents would tell me I couldn't do something or I shouldn't do something, I wanted to prove to them that I was capable, you know? And I remember I was really young. I mean, probably 6 years old, maybe. I don't even know. But I was in the back seat of the car, and it was old cars that had the big hump in the middle, you know. Oh, yeah. And I remember my mom bought a big watermelon, had it on the floor of the back seat, and she was telling me, "Don't pick that up. Don't touch the watermelon. You're going to break it." And I just remembered sitting there in my seat, and that was before we had to wear seatbelts, just going, I could pick it up and not break it. I could pick it up and not break it. And I picked it up and I dropped it and I broke it and watermelon juice all over the back carpet. And that has been my life. You know, it's just
Brent, you klutz. Hope it wasn't deposit watermelon.
Part of it is I'm trying to prove to myself that I am capable.
Yeah.
And just when you are not humble, God will humble you.
Oh, man.
And I've learned it's a lot easier to humble yourself than to be humbled, you know. But in that aspect of our own humility, and like you were talking about the gospel and everything else, and just understanding our need for God and our brokenness and understanding and accepting that, how do you think that humility in our faith works for us when it comes to things like, evangelizing to others, you know, about the gospel, and just how we view others?
Oh, I think that there's like nobody more attractive than a truly humble person. Like truly humble, you know, humility isn't self-deprecation, but like somebody that thinks rightly about themselves. So I think that it helps with evangelism because it's, you know, you don't come off like an arrogant jerk.
No,
or somebody that, you know, is unworthy.
There's a confidence in a humble person.
Yeah.
Like Jesus is obviously the greatest, most humble person you can ever read about. And he's in control because he's got nothing to prove and he's got nothing to lose. He's
not wondering if they like him.
Right. He's just kind of like, this is reality. He lives in the truest form of reality. So I think with evangelism, there would be like, I don't need to answer a question that you're not asking. I don't need to force you into a category of something that I feel like is important. It's like, you know, we'll get there when we get there. Like it's a confidence that God has a longer story. And I think this sermon affected me way more than I ever could have thought because I didn't think it was great at the time. But we were at North Coast at Christmas, and Chris Brown was preaching, and he was talking about the family table. And I'm like, okay, this is an odd kind of illustration. But the way he was talking about it was like, when you get into the conversation with your loved one across the table, here's what I want you to do. I want you to imagine that they're in a long line, and you're only getting a snapshot of their life at that moment. 10 years from now, they could be in a completely different place, believing completely different things. But you're going to treat them right now for their views right at that moment like it's forever. And his whole point was kind of like, how about just backing up a little bit? Taking some perspective that people change and people shape, and that this isn't where they may be even 2 months from now. And just try to get to know them. And I think that was a good, humble perspective of how to engage somebody who may be different than you, or have a different political opinion than you, or have a different position even with the Lord than you do, is just kind of go like, you know what? I'm going to share, and I'm going to trust God to do what he's going to do, but I don't need to force anything here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because I think our initial reaction always is, I need to fix this thing right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's even scarier as parents when your kids are becoming young adults or and they start kind of waffling on things or exploring things, and we just go into panic mode of no.
Yeah.
And part of that is and I love what you guys do, is you just keep that conversation open, and talking to them through things and listening to them. But I think a lot of times we want to fix our kids right now. And part of it is, maybe this is the road that's going to confirm their faith and bring them, stronger to their faith than it's going to drive them away from their faith.
I have gotten further with non-Christians by letting them explore and answering only what they really want to know, or supposing things for them. And I find that term suppose, hey, suppose it might be like this. I mean, not in those terms, but giving it like a sense of like open-endedness. Like, hey, what if it was like this? What do you think? How would that work? And you find they're far more willing to engage instead of just driving like, this is what you should believe. And this, but it's like, what if this is how it was, or what? And that helps them explore the concept more and kind of that keep curious exploration.
Well, God is patient with us, right? And it's his kindness that leads us to repentance. I think we forget that as parents and as people that want to share our faith. So.
Yeah. That is a great thought too. He's patient, and it's his kindness that brings us, into a deeper relationship with us, and we kind of try to skip those parts. And
We do.
Yeah. Like, he ain't kind, he's going to make you. No.
who the heck has time to be patient? I need to fix this now. And I do think that humility aspect too, of knowing our brokenness, it gives us more of a heart of compassion for others, on our path. We don't just see them, as broken and shake your finger at them. And one thing, and I don't know exactly how true this statement is, but I think there is some truth to it, is, the sins that you struggle with, you have more compassion toward, and the sins that you don't struggle with, you have more of a black and white attitude toward, and I think that's because, you might have a fear reaction from things that you've struggled through and came to the other side, but you understand a little more of the brokenness, right? So things that I've never been, we just say like homosexuality, I think in the Christian world, a lot of times people have no tolerance for, people that are
okay
exploring.
with liars.
Yeah, because it's like, I have never been affected by that, so I have a very hard line and shake my finger at you and I'm willing to condemn you. But, if you struggle with alcohol, and I've struggled, I haven't personally, but I've struggled with alcohol, so I'm willing to walk with you more through this and understand the ups and downs of this, and and if this journey, does that make sense?
I always think that we are way harder on other people because we're not internally we don't understand their reasoning, we don't have all the things, but we see our own thoughts. We understand where we're coming from, we know we're tired, we know what that other person said to us, and so it caused us to we give ourselves kind of allowances that we don't give other people because we're not on the inside, so we don't really know all the things that led up to.
Yeah, that Jefferson Fisher book, he actually was talking about that. That's the same reason why you can sit in the car and somebody's crossing in front of you in a crosswalk, and you're like, why are you walking so slow? But when you're in the crosswalk, you're like, hey, come on, why are you guys trying to rush me across the crosswalk? It's like it's that personal self-focus that you have to get past and put yourself in other people's shoes. However, there is a danger that you go so far that you erase that sin is sin because you think you understand it.
And I think only be empathetic.
Right. And I think this is the beauty of Jesus. Jesus never sinned, but he still had empathy for us, like the person who's the counselor talking to the broken talking to the addicted. He's not himself addicted, but he has compassion and yet still tells this person that's still not good. It's still not right. And that is the hard balance in our current culture because we want to be so empathetic, we lose all the lines. because we're so scared of looking like the judgmental bad guy. And yet you've got to have the lines still, and those both have to go together.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying that, the things that you struggle with, you blur the lines. I'm just saying I think you have more tendency, more understanding, and more compassion
More patience.
for their and
When
for
you,
their situation.
I think I was going to say, like, you trust a Christian who limps more than one who strides.
Yeah.
Like in the idea of like Isaac gets in a wrestling match Jacob gets in a wrestling match. I'm going to go through all the brothers. Yeah. Israel gets in a wrestling match with God, and in the end, he comes out limping, and he's always more humble after that point. There's the tendency that you've had your wrestling match and you lost. I think Christians who have lost the wrestling match against God are far more raw, and I love a broken, I like broken congregants in that sense. Like, it's hard, but man, they're so ready for a transformation in their soul to become more like Jesus. And I think that's sometimes why God brings about some of those difficulties.
Yeah, and it makes you more ready, because I was thinking in all of our years of counseling, one of our favorite couples of premarital counseling, we actually were nervous about doing their counseling because both of them had a lot of baggage. And we were just unsure that we were going to be capable of helping them and giving them the right tools. They ended up being one of our favorite couples, and they did have a lot of baggage, but their hearts were like so humble and like, we want to learn. We want to, like, we know where we come from, and that's not what we want. This is what we want. And like, it was kind of incredible, and they ended up having like an amazing marriage. And I always think back to that. Like, it's not that they had this amazing upbringing that allowed them to have a great marriage. It's their humility and their desire to know what God has for them that allowed them to.
Yeah, and their willingness to go through the hard work and the suffering to get there. So,
you had mentioned that the patience thing. You were talking about the crosswalk and the person walking slow, and you're tempted toward anger. When I'm patient in that regard. Yeah, very virtuous in that area. But one thing I struggle with people walking in the crosswalk is I want to honk my horn at them just to watch them jump. Does that ever happen to you? I mean, like, for our whole marriage, my kids and everything, I've always, when people walk in front of the car, Nancy's getting in, I honk the horn, watch her jump. It makes me laugh. And they don't think it's funny, but I always sit there, and there's this 80-year-old woman crossing the street with her bag of groceries, and I'm just sitting there going, with Nancy sitting next to me, should I honk my horn? Should I honk my horn? And I don't think I would ever do it, but
she would have a heart attack.
It is such I know, it is such a temptation. And I will toot my own horn and say, I have successfully defeated all of those temptations. I have never once succumbed to them, but
except
it is
with
there.
Your family.
Oh, well, my family is not a temptation. No.
It's your right.
It is my right. It is. It's like when the kids were little and you would go in with a glass of ice water and pour it over their head when they were in the shower.
We never did
come on. You have not lived. You have not lived till somebody's taking a hot shower and you dump ice water on them.
All I'm remembering is years and years ago, Brent was in youth ministry with me, for those of you who don't know, and we were at a leadership meeting with all of and he was part of the leadership team. Were you there that day?
I don't know.
I had this brand new computer laptop that I was working with, and I got the circle of leaders sitting around me, and Brent kind of saunters over with his cup, and he's drinking from it, and suddenly goes, "Ooh!" and he throws the cup at me like it's full,
right on your computer,
right on my computer, and I jump and like scream, "Ah!" and like tried to throw the computer
Hey,
off.
I've seen that jump before.
Yes, you have, from a completely different story.
Yeah. But the cup was completely empty. I mean, I didn't have anything in it.
I was there. Yeah? I do remember that.
And I just did it to scare him.
Greg screamed like a girl.
That was a horn honking experience without a horn. So.
But you didn't break your computer, right?
No. So the humility, and then you kind of were talking about Jesus in the garden. The whole temptation going on there, and just his anxiety in the garden and just pleading with the Father. And really it was kind of a wine press moment for him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oil press. Yeah. That's kind of what we were saying is that when you're in the press, that it reveals your character, right? So you were asking, like, does temptation count in that way? And it's like, Yeah, in a way it can. It shows off what's inside of you if you give in. Jesus actually will say in Matthew 18 that temptations or the tests are necessary, which is I've always thought that was an interesting phrase, because it's like it's important. And later that Paul will say that it's in your suffering, it's going through the tests that you persevere. And when you persevere, it builds character, and that character produces hope. So I think Jesus is in this press, and it's going to reveal his character, and his character is like perfect, right? I mean, but what's crazy to me is just I've always felt just like overwhelmingly confused by how much he was just overwhelmed. Like, to say that he had grief, sorrow unto death, the idea that he is going to sweat to the point of sweating blood, perhaps, or like blood sweat. I mean, just an intense anxiety that is like, I mean, if you've ever had an anxiety attack, I guess in my mind, it's like, Jesus knows, he gets it in a sense, but just a debilitating, overwhelming moment. I've had some pretty crazy moments in my own life where I've had to do something really hard and just like did not want to go through with it, and having those just like fights, but nothing to what I'm looking at with Jesus. And I'm just like, what possibly could be so dark? And it was a Good Friday that I was prepping for, and this was early on in like 19 years ago or something. And it just came to me. It's like, oh my gosh, Jesus never had any beef with his father. His father never had a reason to be upset with him. I mean, just that idea right there is incredible. It's like he's lived heaven on earth the whole time. Amongst all this sin, he's never experienced a drop of hell, right? A drop of fallenness, a drop of sin. He's just experienced this joy with the Lord. He's seen it. He's watched other people go through it, but he is immune.
Just been with the Father.
Yeah. And then to sit there and be told, like, to know that I'm going to go to the cross and I'm going to have your disfavor. I mean, have you ever had that moment where you knew your dad was so furious with you?
Yes.
Like, it's not a comfortable feeling, right? Brent, you've had lots of moments where your parents were displeased with you. What was that like?
It wasn't fun, it wasn't fun, but it was self-deserved. And I don't think I ever, sometimes I feel like my dad maybe overreacted in my punishment, because when I grew up, I realized I'm not going to punish my kids just because they did something wrong and I was mad at them. Punishment comes from that they knew what the consequences of this action was going to be,
and they did it anyways.
And they did it anyways. And so to me, it's like, you did something wrong. Let's talk about it. I don't know if my kids would fully agree with that, but pretty much it was more of a defiance thing that you were going to be punished for than it was just a messing up thing. So I would say that I probably never got punished for something that I thought I didn't deserve.
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking of like the dread you get when you had your first accident. And you got to go home and tell your parents, or you got to call them. Ugh. Like Jesus never experienced anything like that. Never had to confess a thing to God. Never had to confess a thing that he did wrong to anybody. Never had the dread of having to say, I'm sorry. Like, never had. I mean, and here now he's going to become the very object of all of that evil and over. It's just like, to me, this scene is one of the most incredible scenes in the Bible. Just that he is going to say, okay, Dad, I'm willing. Father, I'm willing to become their sin and accept your displeasure and wrath and punishment on me. I don't even know what I'm asking. I don't even know, in a sense he knows, like, because he knows, but he's not experientially had that happen. That to me is, there's no way to comprehend it. And so I didn't know how to express that in the message, but it definitely is one of the most, it's one of the things I think everybody should pause and just, if it's on Good Friday or if it's at some point, just think about that. Like it really puts your sin in a radically different perspective.
Yeah. And I mean, this kind of falls into that question that Jacob asked. He emailed rabbittrail@obcc.church. But Jacob says, you talked about how Jesus understands sin, and in the garden, I think he's really kind of getting a real dose of this. But he understands sin more clearly than we do. Yet we still live like I got this until we fell. If we already know the path is honest intimacy with God, why do we resist going there before we mess up? What makes that kind of intimacy so hard?
I mean, I think before you even talk about intimacy with God, like, I think you mentioned it. We don't even have intimacy with ourselves.
Right.
Right? Or each other.
Right.
And then God, it's like, we just struggle with intimacy in general.
Yeah. I think this is where I
already confessed at the beginning of this podcast, not wanting to share any of my real prayers with people.
Exactly. It's like I appreciate Tim Keller's work in this area from Genesis chapter 3, where after Adam and Eve fall, he really lays out all of the broken intimacy of the world, and that what happens is, number one, we realize we're naked. And I don't know, that's if you've ever had one of those dreams where you're like, why is it so freaky and scary to be caught naked where you shouldn't be? Like has
everybody had those dreams?
I think everybody has.
Okay, so no, most of mine are like, I have to go to the bathroom and I'm going in an inappropriate place.
That's
I've had those dreams where, I mean, even in kindergarten,
I have to go to the bathroom.
I remember, like, we always had to line up at the door before we got in.
Yeah.
And I'm lined up, and I look down and I realize I'm naked, and I'm trying to get through the school day, without anybody noticing.
Oh yeah. Why is it always school?
I don't know.
I'm just like, I've had it where I'm at like college. I'm like, crud, I'm just like, it's horrible. I hate those dreams. But the idea is that you're vulnerable. You're like exposed, right? And the problem is it's an image of not liking not liking being exposed. Well, you don't feel that way. Tim Keller talks about the fact that when you feel yourself, like something's wrong. Like if you don't have bad knees, you don't feel your knees. If you don't have a bad back, you don't feel your back. You don't feel your body until something's wrong with it.
Yeah, like I never felt my knees until one of them gave out.
Right.
And I was like, crud.
I never felt old until
I started feeling old.
Yeah, exactly. That's not the same. But there is this truth to that. And I think that the fact that we feel everybody else's sins shows us something's wrong, that I feel broken inside. Maybe people who struggle with, the transgender stuff or homosexuality. I think that, or even just the desire for a lot of sex and heterosexual sin, or to get married just because I can't be okay with myself.
Even before that, I think the biggest sin that we have is more regarding our own, like, how we view ourselves against others, right? So like we're like, we're comparing, and we're like, competing for sizing that up. Yeah, like, so most of our sin, I would say, comes from reacting poorly to how other people are reacting to us, right? Like that's typically
our interpretation of that.
Yeah.
And so there's, to me, what happens is when you have a baseline that we're already broken in intimacy, you're going to hide. And I love this passage from 1 John because it indicates what the problem is. It says, and I believe the problem is you don't want to be intimate because you're afraid. Mm-hmm. And you're afraid because you're going to get punished, condemned, made fun of, pushed down. There's all these
Actually, before you go there, though, like, I think self-intimacy is first. Mm-hmm. But do you think fear is actually what keeps us from being honest with ourselves about how we feel?
I don't think we want to know how bad we are or how messed up. We don't want to believe it.
Fear is the only thing. I think that it is an aloofness of, like, not paying attention. Like, I think people.
Oh, I think that's the innocent side. Like, there's a general sense that it's hard to notice yourself because you're You're just you. You're going through life. But I do think I've met plenty of people who are self-deceptive, that they are not willing to admit, even though it's being told to them that this is like, how many times do we tell our kids, hey, the number one thing you need to do is just accept that this is how you are. Right? Accept you're angry. Yeah. Accept that you're like.
I just had a conversation with one of our kids. They need to talk to you.
Oh.
And it was such a good conversation. And like the person, I won't give the sex, but doesn't want to be honest because they're embarrassed about something. Right? And so, and I literally was like, no, your dad wants to know who you really are. Like, so you don't need to be embarrassed. Like, you need, and it's not anything that is. It's fine. It's not like a big deal. But for him, dang it, well, we have 3 boys, so you don't know which one it is. But it was just
I do.
It was just so cute though, because I saw him struggling with like, he's willing to tell me. Like he's semi-aware of himself, but then I had to like restate it in a way of like, this is what you're thinking and feeling about this. Now you need to just be willing to admit that.
I think, so embarrassment is self-condemnation.
Yeah.
Embarrassment is telling yourself, like, oh my gosh, everybody doesn't like me but you don't have any evidence that that's really what's going on. It's just how you're self-condemning from the crowd you created in your head. Embarrassment is sometimes, real because people laugh at you, but nobody's there laughing at you. That's self-condemnation, right? So self-condemnation is born from, and so we fear even our own self-condemnation. I think condemnation is a critical problem. We know the fall's in us. We feel the fall. We realize something's wrong, and we condemn ourselves as something. That's why we tell ourselves, why am I so stupid? Why do I not do this kind of stuff? Why am I, why I have no whatever, you name it. We say really mean things about ourselves, and then we say really mean things about other people. And then we say really mean things about God. And
but then in your sermon, one of your points is that we always tell each other that you got this. Like, yeah. Because that is, I always looked at it as when, like in dealing with women's ministry, I was always thinking that we do 2 things. We're either really harsh with other people or we lie to them and say that they're better off than they are. And we're not being honest.
Right. So all that to say, there's this verse in 1 John that says, there is no fear in love. But perfect love casts out fear, because fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. So to answer kind of Jacob's question, what makes that kind of intimacy so hard is that I think it's a fear of punishment. We have to integrate the gospel. We have to integrate your forgiveness. You have to integrate that God sees you in Christ in order to begin to live truly who you are. It's not, you're only able to be intimate and honest and authentic and real when the fear of whatever somebody else tells me is gone, when you have that humility, when all of that kind of kicks into the same gear. So I do think that it is adapting and connecting that Jesus Christ bore my sin and my punishment. And I have nothing to fear with God. If I have nothing to fear with God, I have nothing to fear with myself, because if he won't condemn me, why should I condemn myself? When the woman is not condemned, who is here to condemn you? And she says, no one, because she knows if God doesn't condemn her, there's no one to condemn. And so we have to really, there's a lot of people like, how do I even forgive myself? But it's like, by knowing that if God doesn't condemn you, it is only arrogant for you to assume that you get to condemn yourself.
Yeah. And this is going to sound anti-humility. I don't even know if that's a real word, but the opposite of humility. But I do think it's part of that. Is I think one thing that makes the intimacy with God difficult is believing that you're worthy of God's love. A couple of things. For one, I think that worth, is an external force, right? I mean,
it's something put on you.
Yeah, something that's put on you, right? And I always use the example of like, the Hope Diamond, or the Mickey Mantle rookie card, right? I mean, those are worth, $60,000 or millions and millions of
Or the new
dollars.
$16.5 million Pokemon card
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
gold chain.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, how much is that worth, right? The baseball card's
To me,
worth
nothing.
with a
Just
cheap,
kidding.
a little piece of cardboard with some cheap ink.
Yeah.
The Hope Diamond is really nothing more than a clear rock. I mean, really, how much worth is it? But somebody said, I would be willing to sacrifice this much money for it. That determines its worth. Now, I think a lot of times with us, we kind of can look at ourselves and go, I'm not worth, I'm not worth that. So it's hard for us to receive that intimacy from God and that love from God because we can't see our worth in it. But he said, you're worth the very life of my son. And I want to buy you back and redeem you.
That's right.
And again, like with Nancy and I, we went through the 5 love languages, and you guys know Nancy, and it's just like gift her like crazy. I've shared that where it's just like, I got to buy this for somebody because they're on my mind, and I saw this, and and so we talked a long time about gifts being one of her love languages, and she was like, no, it's not, and I'm like, no, honey, it is. I mean, there's no way you can say it's not. And she's like, no, it's not, because I'm uncomfortable when people give me things, and I'm like, that doesn't mean it's not your love language. That means it's difficult for you to receive love from others, and I think that's what makes that intimacy level so difficult, and even human relationships, to see yourself as worthy of their love and commitment, and letting go of your baggage and just believing it, because this is what they're saying about you, and this is how they're valuing you, and to just receive that and live in that, I think is an important step toward intimacy with others and with God.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You look like you're going to say something.
I was. And then my son called me.
Okay. Did I distract you, or you?
No. The whole time when you guys been talking, I've been thinking about the Tim Keller quote, where he says that you made the comment that our sin is way worse than we ever imagined, and Tim Keller has a quote about that, like our sin is way far worse. We're greater sinners than we could ever imagine, but God's love is far greater. So it's really putting that test to like, do we actually believe that God is that great and that his love is that great?
Is God's grace bigger than your
My
sin?
sin. Yeah.
And I would say yes, because you couldn't defeat it if it was.
Well, there's a picture that is in one of John Piper's books on the pleasure. I think it's Future Grace, and he talks about conceiving of God's love and grace as an ocean, an infinite ocean, and you're receiving a small little channel of that every day of your life. Like you're getting a little tiny bit, and the little bit you get can never exhaust this massive ocean that's coming at you. And it's never going to run out. It's just it just keeps pouring and keeps pouring and keeps. You could leave the faucet on, and the grace of God will pour over you, and you will never run dry. And that's
That's why
incredible.
Christians should meditate on the goodness of God.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then again, going back to the garden, and just that wine press aspect of Jesus's character being exposed and going to the cross, even though he was wrestling with the Father about it, and again, it shows his character, and the scriptures are clear, and I'm going to paraphrase, but it's basically your suffering is builds righteousness, right? In that sense that through our suffering we become more righteous and all that stuff, but it does establish character, because there was sin in my life where I was just like praying all the time, God, just take this desire away from me so I'll never struggle with it again. And I was praying for all these bad things to happen to me if I ever did it again. And and I realized God isn't going to just take that desire away from me, to sin. He's going to help me, but he's going to give me opportunities to build my character and and change who I am and change my desires and all that stuff. So that suffering produces character.
Yeah, oftentimes we're asking for the miracle because we don't want to go through the suffering it's
But-
going to require to change.
But when we change, what is that? It's because we're leaning into, we're with God, right? It's that relationship with Him that changes us,
Right.
that allows for that.
And so Debbie asks,
sorry.
because God promised us we're going to suffer, Debbie asked, what does God get out of people's suffering?
Yeah, I think that it's a very interesting way to
Is he
phrase the
sadistic
question.
and he just finds pleasure in our suffering?
Well, I can actually say no. I mean, there's a
definitely don't.
passage in Ezekiel 18. I'll read it to you. It says, none of the transgressions that he has committed, he's talking to somebody in there, but she shall be remembered against him for the righteousness that he has done, he shall live. Have I any pleasure in the death of the wicked, declares Yahweh, the Lord Yahweh, and not rather that he should turn away and live? And so he's like, no, the answer is no. It's like, that's how it's phrased. He's like, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked. I have no pleasure in the sufferings of the wicked. He's not enjoying the suffering.
In fact, it's grieving Him.
Yeah, and yet we got to ask several.
Would you say no? You can say no to that.
So he's grieving with him.
No,
I think.
like, does he grieve? He grieves the sin, right? I mean, he
Oh,
grieves.
I think that God's multitudinal in
suffering.
His. We call it, and when we talk about God, it's like no attribute of God is not affecting the other attribute. So when He's bringing His justice, it's also just it is like grieving Him. The Spirit is grieved when we sin. So there's a grief, but there's also a necessary satisfaction in bringing some suffering because He's bringing justice. He's bringing discipline to His children. Some suffering God is allowing, and what does God get out of it? God doesn't need anything, so He doesn't need the suffering. But what He is producing in people sometimes is a change of character, like we've talked about. He is bringing about justice because it's necessary, and there's satisfaction in that justice. Sometimes He is allowing it because it will bring forth His plan. If this suffering doesn't happen, these things don't. So, like, if Christ doesn't suffer on the cross, who is a person suffering, no one is saved, right? So God gains all of His children through suffering. That's one thing God would gain or get out of people suffering. He gains glory from His children being willing to suffer on His behalf. And then He rewards them in their suffering because we have been willing to stand with Him and show that our hearts are willing to love Him. And He gains our love through suffering. In fact, it was a book called The End of Christianity by William Dembski. And this is a quote we've used a lot. And it's one I like. It says that the quote is pretty much like, there is no currency of love in a fallen world apart from suffering.
Right.
Because I could give you flowers and be lying to you. I could use words, I love you, and be lying to you. I could be flattering you. I could be doing, but it's when I'm willing to suffer on your behalf, there's no reason but that I love you. And so that's the currency. And the degree by which you are willing to suffer is the degree by which you are willing to love. And so God shows us His love by His suffering, not just from His words. And so God gains love. We show our love oftentimes in a fallen world by our willingness to suffer on His behalf. So in that way, God would gain something from the suffering of people. And so the last idea I would really think about that is that we gain from human suffering. Work is a willingness to suffer for a good, right? I mean, I labor in a message, or we labor in a calendar, or we labor to counsel someone, or we labor, and this is a little tidbits of suffering that produce the wonders of this world, that produce the goods of this world. When we don't want to suffer, we actually stop working. We actually stop producing. We don't create culture. We don't produce the things that God's called us to do. We become inactive completely because we don't want to suffer. And I think that there's a more noble aspect to suffering than we give in our current culture because we're so scared of it, because we don't suffer like the vast majority of the world on a regular basis kind of has to suffer in life at some level. That we're very fragile, very, very fragile. So,
And, I don't want to be like anthropomorphic with God in that sense, but when we think of suffering too, I think sometimes we think we're the ones suffering. God's not suffering; we're suffering. So like, what does God get out of suffering? But I feel like God suffers along with us. Kind of as a parent, you suffer when your kids are suffering. You're not removed from that. But part of that aspect of allowing our kids to suffer, again, is helping to develop them into the person they should be as an adult, saying no. And your children might really look at this as suffering because they don't understand the guardrails that you are placing in their lives. But
I do want to be careful with that. There is a heresy called patripassianism, which is this idea that the father suffers, and it's debated. Just so you know, Japanese theologians that have kind of grown up, and there's not a lot of them. They actually argue for the suffering of God, of the Father with the Son at the cross, for that very argument. Like, they're very acquainted with the suffering from what's gone on in their culture. It is a hotly debated topic in certain theological circles. So I don't want to just go no, but definitely in Christ, God understood our suffering. And the Spirit grieves, which we would say is that a form of suffering. And then the question mark is always about the Father, whether he suffers or not. And typically most would say he doesn't, but that's because they don't feel like he has any form of emotions. And yet, we could debate about that. I just need to bring that up so we're careful.
So like at the time of Noah, when it said God, repented and,
regretted, what he had
and
done.
stuff like that. So are they talking about God the Father, or are they not? Because to say that he's kind of devoid of emotions, sounded like emotion to me.
Yeah, I would say that in that moment in his will, he sees what he knew it was coming. And he regrets that this is the world that he's created, but it's not like he's not going to keep it going. Right. And he has this this is a part I don't like. And so does he change his mind? No, that's not what it means. It's an interesting text. It's complicated, but it's that would be something we'd have to get into at another time.
Yeah, that would be cool. And, just the emotional aspect of God, and that's stuff I pondered. And again, it could be Japanese heresy.
No. But I just think that it's important. We read the Bible and we don't read it with the same kind of Platonic or Aristotelian idea of God. The Aristotelian and Platonic God cannot have passions, cannot have much, because that would mean he changes. And I don't read that God in the Bible. I read a God with passion and emotion and anger and love and joy. So I have a tendency to kind of go I don't think that his emotional states are necessarily him changing in his core of who he is. So I do lean more with you. I'm just making sure that we know there is a debate out there on that.
But I've always, and we can wrap it up right now, and we've got a couple of questions that we'll probably save for the next podcast. But I just always have thought through the cross, and at the beginning of Genesis, when God is creating the world and the land and the trees, and then as he's creating the trees, going, this creation of mine is going to be used to form the cross that is going to hang my son, and or even Jesus through creation, I am creating the instruments that are going to be used against me, Hey, Dad, can we just not create trees? I'm joking, but just that thought process, you can't separate that in my mind, as God's doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
And
but we can look at it and see how God was being a good example in his intimacy with himself. He's being honest, right? And that's one of the main points in the sermon that and the question that Jacob had. And I feel like we could still give people a few more more practical ways to be honest with themselves and God.
Yeah.
In intimacy.
Which ones were you thinking? Some of the tools I've learned?
Yeah, just tools. Yeah, because I feel like this is a big struggle in our culture. I find that most people struggle in this area.
Yeah, and so I don't want people to think that I'm being only psychological when I bring this stuff up. I actually do think there is something. We need tools because we're not like any humans that have existed prior to us. We are disconnected with our emotions and feelings. So the point that if you'll really get into the Greek and the Hebrew, when they talk about emotions, it's actually body language. It's like and what I mean by that is like their spleen is moved. They feel heat in their nose. That's how the word anger. We go anger. It's like, well, we almost are so abstract that we don't understand the bodily connections. And so one of the things that they talk about is just pausing on a regular basis and stepping back with like something like an emotions wheel or some kind of chart of emotions that's helpful. And just what they say is ask yourself, like, what am I feeling? And you go through your roles. Like, when I think about me as a dad, how do I feel right now? Oh man, I feel like I'm happy. I'm excited about my kids, or I'm a little nervous about this conversation we just had, and I don't even know what it's about yet. What am I going to have walking into when I get home? Right. That would be an honest like assessment. And then I think about how do I feel about me and Theressa right now, or how do I feel about my friendships? And then they say, try on the base emotions. Do I feel sad? Do I feel afraid? Do I feel angry? And then if you feel angry, they also say, especially for men, what's the emotion behind the emotion? Because you can mask emotion. Sometimes we feel angry when we're scared. We feel angry when we're sad. We just feel angry when there's no reason to be angry, because it's just the one emotion we're allowed to feel as men typically. So they would say that's one step. Another I would say is practice the art of journaling. And in your journal, get used to writing the most bald truth you possibly can. Be honest. Like if you're angry, write out your anger, and then don't ever share it with anybody. That whole thing, like don't type in the email, write it somewhere else and then throw it away. Be honest somewhere, get it out. But start accepting the turmoil inside of you,
especially with God. Like when you're with God in your prayer, like being honest.
I know I said this and I still feel like maybe I shouldn't, but I'm like, if somebody struggles with cussing and you're not actually like dropping a cuss word in your prayers sometimes, like, are you really being raw? Now, I'm not, again, like I said, I'm not encouraging that. I don't think that's where you should stay. But I do think sometimes because we're not willing to be completely 100% honest with where we're at, that those things don't get cleaned up. Those things don't become part of our spiritual journey. They become this thing over here that God doesn't care about. But like when he cares about how you care about the Steelers, Brent. I mean, he really does. So but I think that's been a huge thing. There's also this idea of like I talked about the scan, like literally feeling your body.
Like where are you feeling it?
Where are you feeling your tension? Like you just pause, you take a deep breath. And you just kind of like, ooh, I feel that tension in my lower back, or why? What is there? And then when you do that with your body and that with your emotions, you actually begin to find that they connect. You carry your emotions in certain places. Oh, my stomach's upset. Oh, I'm nervous. So sometimes you can't get to the emotion except through your bodily function and how you're feeling. So there's a lot of those kinds of things. And just another thing that they'll say is get to know who you were. Go back through your story. Start looking at what happened in your life and how did you respond to that? If we're not going to be aware of our story, we're just not going to engage rightly in how God's using that story. If you're looking for a good book in all this, I think a really good book that is a great introduction to this conversation is by Peter Scazzero. It's called The Healthy Spirituality, emotionally healthy spirituality. And I think he does a great job walking people biblically and through some very good practices and things you can start with to start becoming emotionally healthy and aware of
more connected to
who you are. And as you're a little bit more connected with yourself, you become better at connecting with God and connecting with others. And it really does start to change things. So Peter Scazzero's emotionally healthy spirituality. There we go.
All right. Well, we got a couple of questions that we'll probably save till next time.
Yep.
So,
all right. Yeah.
Take us home, brother.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We hope that you've enjoyed this conversation. Hey, share it with somebody who you think might actually like it. You can share it on the YouTube or the podcast or anything else. But also let us know if you've got some follow-up questions or some thoughts. If we can get to those, we will. And we're having them stack up. So we're going to have to check those out. But also just to let you know, we won't be in next week. So we'll be waiting. So don't be looking for it. It's going to be a couple weeks of skipping, but we'll be back with you as soon as we can. We're just glad you joined with us. Get those questions ready and send them our way. You can drop them at rabbittrail@obcc.church, rabbittrail@obcc.church. Otherwise, we pray that you guys have a great rest of your week. God bless.